Hurricane Michael closing in on the Florida Panhandle. The Category 4 storm is expected to make landfall just hours from now. Jeff Flock is braving the elements in Panama City Beach. Jeff, please be safe out there.
You know, I didn't survive 35 years of these, Sandra, without having some common sense to me. You might question that seeing the scene right now, but I assure you, the thing is that we're getting most of the blow now off the water. That tends to mean there's no debris coming at you. That's a positive thing. Once we get it past us, if I walk out, we get a little bit more maybe in the wind. Once we get it past us, then you start to get damage on land and that coming back at you. Then that's when you want to take cover, because that's when, you know, you get projectiles and that sort of thing. I can tell you that there is still traffic on the road, some of it law enforcement, police officer just about to pass us here. But as you can see, we are still a couple hours or perhaps more away from the center of circulation. And if it comes in to us here, well, it's going to get a whole lot worse than this is all I can tell you. Maybe you see up the beach, not a whole lot of activity. A lot of big buildings out here that people think they're safe to stay in. However, none of them have ever been in a Category 4 storm here along the Panhandle. So we continue to watch it, and well, we'll let you know how it turns out, Sandra.
Is that police tape flying behind you, the yellow tape?
Yeah, that looks like it was. I don't know what that was. That may have come from somewhere else. I don't know where that came from, but it's caught up in the palm trees here, so I don't think it came from this location, but I'm not 100% sure.
So you're saying there's
a lot
actually
of things
still
flying in the air at the moment.
There are still people driving around in this?
Yeah, I don't know if you can see, there's a guy just up the street here. I don't know if Kyle's able to see him. Can you see that guy, the car up there? I don't know if you can. And then off in the other, well, he can't see the other way because he's behind a post. Wow. You know, just so you know, those of us on hear from people on Twitter and say, oh, you know, you're not safe, you're not safe. Believe me, everybody is hunkered down. We're watching for debris. We're in good shape, and some of us actually enjoy this sort of thing, and these displays of Mother Nature that are truly extraordinary.
The worst is yet to come, though. The eye wall is not quite yet on shore, and it looks like it's going to be right on top of you when it does get there.
It'll be pretty close, and I'll tell you, I don't think this will do widespread damage, but I do think where the eye wall comes ashore, that is a place where you're really going to see, I think it's fair to call it catastrophic damage. I know these buildings are solidly constructed here, but there are a whole lot that you can't see in the camera view right now that are just regular homes, and those necessarily will not withstand Category 4 conditions. You're always hopeful that there's some weakening before it gets on land. Often there is, because the leading part of the circulation gets over land and it starts to disrupt. But this is moving fast. This is moving 12 miles an hour, and so, you know, that's going to minimize that effect. And I think we're going to get quite a storm here before we're done.
Jeff Flock, we always appreciate your reporting. You are going to be on the ground there in Panama City Beach, Florida. We're expecting this hurricane to make landfall soon. Jeff, be safe, and thank you for your reporting.
And thanks, Kyle, for your camera work as well.
Fairgrounds. They park their trucks here. We feed them. We give them their safety briefing, and they check in. And then we're going to bus them back to their hotels tonight. Tomorrow, we will wait and see, you know, where the damage occurs, and then our other employees doing the storm team will decide where to go. We have probably committed resources from more than a dozen states, coming far as Michigan, Illinois, Ohio, and as far west as Oklahoma, Louisiana, and Texas, and then all surrounding states coming in to help us. We have probably more than 2,000 committed outside resources, plus with our 1,100 employees and our 330 contractors on our system already, we have over 4,000 workers planning to help us out restore power, and we're going to be getting more as well.
I'm going to lose everything. I have the restaurant is my main source of income, and it's going to be shut down probably for the rest of the year. and I have family. We've got cinder blocks. I'm going back over to the house in about 15 minutes, and I'm going to start lifting furniture and putting it on cinder blocks. So that's what we're doing right now. But our house flooded in during Dennis, so we're kind of scared. We walked away from everything and said goodbye to it. It might not be here tomorrow, man. That's it. I really don't want to cry on your camera, but this is what we got to deal with. I'm staying. I'm in a Cat 5 building. I can take a Cat 5, so that's it. I'm just going to stay close, and I'm going to make sure my stuff is all right. I'm going to make sure these other people's stuff is all right.
Let me be clear. Hurricane Michael is a monstrous storm, and the forecast keeps getting more dangerous, and we're now just 12 hours away from seeing impacts. The time to prepare is now. Yesterday, I formally asked President Trump to issue a pre-landfall disaster declaration that will allow us to draw down more federal resources. Once this is approved, my office will get that information to you. I also spoke with the President yesterday. He committed to provide any federal assistance Florida may need. We have declared a state emergency in 35 Florida counties. This allows state, federal, and local emergency managers to be able to quickly respond to this disaster. Yesterday, I announced the closure of state offices in the 35 counties currently under our emergency order. I've spoken to FEMA Administrator Brock Long several times, and a team from FEMA is here in the State Emergency Operations Center and providing federal assistance. That includes experts from Homeland Security, the EPA, the Department of Defense, Health and Human Services, and the Army Corps of Engineers. At my direction, the State Emergency Operations Center is fully activated. This means the State Emergency Response Team is on 24-hour response. We are 100% focused on preparing for Hurricane Michael. I think a lot of people have been through 110-mile-an-hour winds. They've been through 12 inches of rain. I think what's different about this storm that really concerns me is the storm surge. We have a chance of 8 to 12 feet of storm surge. I will hope everybody takes that seriously. Even 2 to 4 feet of storm surge is deadly, and so I want to make sure every local community is thinking about their evacuation orders. This is a devastating storm. The state has experienced winds before like this and rain like this. The storm surge could be historic.
Now check out as the water is even coming up even further, there is a current coming. So check out down at my feet here. The current is coming and going all the way over here. This was just dry land hours ago. So Michael's hitting us now, and it's only going to get worse from here. Again, if you are in Horseshoe Beach, there's a mandatory evacuation. You've got to get out to the shelter at Dixie County High School. For now, Jocelyn Howard reporting. Back to you, Bob and Sue.
Jocelyn, thank you. Christina Leavenworth, we have made contact with again in Miramar Beach, where we've seen throughout the morning the conditions rapidly deteriorating. Christina?
Hey, Bob, yeah, the wind's still coming at us very, very fast. This just came off the Dunkin' Donuts drive-through sign, and that's not light. And then we're seeing things like this as well. We're starting to see some debris from this storm, rain kicking up, the winds howling out here. Remember, this area is under a curfew. They don't want people driving around until further notice. We also have a few bridges closed, 331 Mid-Bay Bridge, and fire and EMS services. They're not going out right now because it's too dangerous for their crews at this time. For emergency calls in South Walton, they'll consider it on a case-by-case basis, looking at this weather, that type of thing. Mostly what we're seeing where we're at, and we're about 4 or 5 blocks from the water, is just trees blowing very, very strongly, some debris here and there, hearing that howling, and you're just hearing strange noises where you're not sure really what it is. You just hear kind of a humming noise or something like that you hear every so often. But very, very windy, not fun to stand in by any means. We definitely recommend everyone stay inside. We're not seeing a lot of lightning in this area, just that wind and rain. And I know that the sheriff's deputies are out there. If they see people out and about, they're telling them, hey, this isn't cool. You can't be outside. And they could potentially arrest you. Bob?
Christina Leavenworth reporting live in Miramar Beach, and that terrible moan from those high-speed tropical winds. Thankful if we never hear those again. Hannah McKenzie is a little bit further down the road in either Destin or Okaloosa
Well,
Island?
she's on Okaloosa Island, and Hannah, we understand that a short time ago they shut off the water and sewer on Okaloosa Island.
Yeah, I did hear that, you guys. I saw that. That was just for emergency purposes only. That was as a precaution. But we actually moved down the road from Okaloosa Island. We are now in Destin. And I want to take you guys closer to look at the conditions out here. People are walking around, and that is not good. I was standing beside a condo, so it was kind of shielding us from the wind. But I want you to take a look at that stop sign. That's how we've been judging the wind. And then also, once you guys see some of that, maybe Tristan can pan up to that light, which has been kind of bothering us. It looks a little bit scary, and it's been moving with these very ferocious winds right now. And I want to take you guys over here to look at the surf because, like I said, we're kind of taking shelter behind a condo here. So, bear with us. It gets gusty. Okay, so let's take a look at the conditions out here right now. The surf is extremely strong. It's nothing to joke about. It's nothing to play about. People are coming down here and taking pictures, taking Facebook's lives, like Bob said earlier. Do not do that. Rely on us. We're the ones that are doing it for you. But look at that. That is absolutely strong, so fierce, so angry. It is still churning its way over here. So stay off the beaches no matter where you are. It is dangerous. It's not a good condition to be. We will check in with you guys a little bit later. Reporting live in Destin, Hannah McKenzie, Channel 3 News.
Yeah, not a fun. Governor Scott tweeting, was this a tweet? Tweeted just a few minutes ago, and this is a quote. We have trucks loaded with tons of food, water, and other critical supplies ready to move in, including 1.5 million meals ready to eat, MREs, and 1 million gallons of water. That coupled with about 4,000 power crews and line workers ready to go from Pensacola Interstate Fairgrounds to move to every part of the state that needs its power restored. And there will be tens of thousands of people, if not hundreds of thousands of people who will need that after Michael finally winds through. Moving at a pretty good clip at 14 miles an hour to the north-northeast. And as Alan was showing us just a little while ago, by tonight it's going to be in Georgia. And we'll be on the back end of this thing and get a much better idea then at assessing the damage. What's this? All right, this is from President Trump. Was this a tweet also, or was this a soundbite that we have?
This is a belief we have actual sound from the president.
Okay, yeah, President Trump describing a trip that he's soon to take in Florida. Ori, just go ahead and roll it. Let's see what he has to say.
We want to get down there as soon as possible. At the same time, I don't want to go down where we're interfering with the people, first responders, the FEMA people. I want them to focus on the storm, not me. So we'll probably look to Sunday or Monday to go down and meet with the governors, meet with everybody, and do what we have to do, like we did in North Carolina, South Carolina, where that worked out really well.
All right, and we're going back to Stephen Quinn. He is still there in Tallahassee monitoring the situation for us.
Hey, guys. Yeah, I just want to give you just a look at the conditions right there where we are here in Tallahassee right now. We're starting to get a lot of wind in this area, starting to pick up. And the concern now is not only just wind, but the trees that could be brought down with it. There are widespread power outages that are expected. Keep in mind that we're about 80 miles from where Hurricane Michael made landfall in a straight line. It's about a 2-hour drive, yet still the impact expected to be significant here. There are going to be and are power crews that have been staging here in the city where you literally cannot find a hotel tonight. That's how many have been here. And the concern, of course, as I mentioned, the wind, as you see here, if you're looking at our feed, you'll see strong enough to do damage. Not a place we want to have a tent right now, certainly. And we are expecting to get hurricane force winds, is what local officials told us in a press conference earlier today, in this area later on as that storm continues to make its way north and east towards where we are. It is quiet here right now. Florida State University and Florida A&M are both closed. Many of those students, as I understand it, staying in their dorms, and ones that have lived off campus are being allowed to seek shelter in local auditoriums. Meanwhile, high schools here in Leon County are also serving as shelters. As you see debris there kind of being blown around. We understand from county officials that there are about 1,500 people seeking shelter, not just from in Leon County, but also in points southward. Keep in mind, while this storm did make landfall a ways away, there is still significant storm surge expected to the south of us along the coast here. That's in areas like Wakulla County, and there they expect a storm surge of 9 to 13 feet. Mandatory evacuations have been in place for towns like St. Mark's. And from what we saw yesterday when we were in that area, most of the people did appear to heed those warnings. Obviously, there's always a concern that there could be some people who hadn't. However, we have seen some police out here as well as sheriff's deputies, although I'm told from county officials once those conditions start to deteriorate, which is what we expect in the next hour or two, they're going to go off the roads. They're going to be inside so that they can stay safe. And so that's something to keep in mind. And you can just see a lot of leaves right now for the most part in the roadways, but it's the trees that they're worried about. If you're familiar with Tallahassee, those live oaks, for example, beautiful. And they hang over the roads, as you see right here, for example, but they also hang over the power lines. And when those come down, it's going to put a lot of Tallahassee in the dark, or at least that is the fear, as we get another strong gust right there as we stand on we drive along one of these hills here of Tallahassee. Another point that I can tell you, obviously, airports are closed here. Most people do appear to be inside, so that is certainly a good sign, and we'll be continuing to monitor the situation here in Tallahassee over the course of the next few hours as we expect it to deteriorate.
Stephen, that was one of the things I was going to mention. You seem to pretty much have the road to yourself. I counted correctly. I think I saw perhaps two other cars. Are most people just hunkered down, or do you sense that many of them evacuated the area altogether?
I don't believe, in talking to police here, I don't believe there were necessarily mass evacuations, for example, like we may have seen on the beach. And I'll tell you the reason that I say that in talking to them. The one thing that we have seen right now, there isn't a gas shortage per se. What the problem has been here is that a lot of these gas stations, to keep their employees obviously safe, have been closed, and so they're not being refilled or reset. And for that reason, some of them are not working. However, for the most part, a lot of people do appear to have stayed in town. Now, I can't speak to the extent in terms of, for instance, the students at Florida State and Florida A&M, those colleges here in town, how many of those may have left for a long weekend given the closures. But from what police had told us, there did not appear to be mass evacuations here in the city. But again, and I emphasize, one of the big areas are those points to the south in Wakulla County, for example, and the town of St. Mark's is one where we visited, where they are expecting storm surge. There were evacuations inland for those people. Now, that is obviously a significantly less populated area than where we are here in the state capital. And it appears here most people are just hunkering in, as you mentioned.
Stephen, thank you. Stephen, brought up he is 80 miles away from the center of the storm right now. As we heard Alan say, the hurricane-force winds extend out from the center of that storm for 45 miles, I think is what he last said with the 1 p.m. update. The tropical storm-force winds extend from the center about 175 miles. What we're looking at on the left side of your screen is the radar indicating the precipitation that's coming down right now. Some other images that you see that this thing is big. And when you're looking at something as, for instance, infrared, which is showing you how high the clouds are, or you're looking at visible satellite, which shows you the entire cloud field of the storm, the real powerful part and damaging part of the storm is that core right now where those winds are. There's not really a good you can see how quickly they're moving, but there's not an individual thing that shows you how far those winds extend. 45 miles from the center, so Tallahassee's kind of right in that transition period between the tropical storm force winds and the hurricane force winds. And thankfully, as Stephen was driving through Tallahassee, we did not see a whole lot of downed trees. I'm not sure where we're seeing this. The water coming up a stairwell right now. But we have Caitlin Wright standing by who could perhaps answer some of these questions about where this thing is right now. But it appears that the entire eye wall, the entire circle of the core, has come on shore, and it's moving at a pretty good clip at 14 miles an hour.
Yeah, you're exactly right. So it is moving rather quickly, Bob and Sue, and that is one blessing with this hurricane. Of course, those maximum sustained winds, the last update from the National Hurricane Center, still at that Category 4 strength, but this is moving pretty fast. Areas that were just getting really pounded by the eye wall, some of them still are just nearing Panama City, but some areas like Mexico Beach, some of those people that were probably hunkered down if they did stay surrounding the Panama City beach and Mexico Beach area they're probably about to go outside just to see what has happened to their outside areas. I mean, this has been a powerful, still is a very powerful hurricane. So all areas just to the northeast and to the north of still what is the center of this storm still need to brace for those impacts. Now across northwest Florida, the very extreme northwest Florida, I should say, Escambia County and areas in southwest Alabama as well, Santa Rosa County. For the most part, people are asking us those impacts. We still have this stiff northerly wind, which has actually allowed our surf to calm down a little bit, almost the most calm that we've seen it all day, but still very dangerous conditions out there. You're looking at a couple of live views there, just kind of coupling what we're seeing across the Florida Panhandle. And again, that eye wall is just going to be pretty dangerous to still be on. So I'll go ahead and zoom into a couple of different areas here as we track Hurricane Michael on 3D Doppler, going more toward Tallahassee. Some of these outer rain bands, some of these most eastern outer feeder bands, still going to be setting up across your area. You'll get kind of these waves in increments of these really heavy and moderate downpours. And then you'll get some pretty light bands set up through your area. The heaviest of rain and the strongest winds will continue, of course, to be closest to the center of this storm. As we zoom in, we can just check out where that eye wall is. Now, basically just to the north of Panama City right now, as this continues to be pretty westerly heavy in terms of the eye wall, northerly and northwesterly heavy, I'll call it, and still kind of wrapped with some thunderstorms. So don't be surprised if you're nearing that area. You're hearing rumbles of thunder and seeing some lightning embedded in this as well, along with, of course, those major Category 3 and 4 hurricane wind gusts at times as well. This, even though we have made landfall with this Category 4 Hurricane Michael, impacts most certainly still are not over. So flood alerts still remain in effect with coastal flood advisories, no longer for southwest Alabama through Mobile Bay, but we do have them in Escambia and in Santa Rosa County there. So that coastal flood advisory is still in effect for Okaloosa County as well. Flash flood watch for Okaloosa County, and of course points eastward. So all across the Florida Panhandle, we'll be looking at these flash flood watches as this water continues to pile up, especially on the eastern side where the storm surge goes. So hurricanes, areas, oh wow, you see that power surge there on the side? We're going to continue to see impacts with this, but areas of low pressure are counterclockwise rotation. So that onshore wind flow is coming right toward the Big Bend in Apalachicola. I don't know the latest in terms of the storm surge height in Apalachicola, but I was looking at just about an hour ago, and they were already seeing a 6-foot storm surge right before Michael made landfall. So we still have those maximum sustained winds at 155 miles per hour. It is still moving to the north-northeast at 14 miles per hour with our Category 5 hurricane wind gust at 184 miles per hour. So tropical storm force winds are felt well away from the center. I believe it's 175 to 185 miles away from the center. And those hurricane gusts, of course, a little bit closer, a little bit more confined, about 40 to 45 miles away from the center. So this is going to track pretty quickly all the way up in Georgia by tonight and then through the Carolinas. Now, the Carolinas saw a lot of rain, of course, from Hurricane Florence, and they're going to see some more, so they have flash flood watches already posted. It's not going to add a significant amount of rain to flood and crest the rivers again, and I believe in South Carolina, the Waccamaw River is still one that is not at the average or minor flood stage yet, so they'll be watching the Waccamaw River very closely, but a lot of them in the Carolinas will expect about 2 to 5 inches of rain from Hurricane Michael, and we'll continue tracking it as it's tracking still the eye wall just north and northeast of Panama City Beach, Florida right now.
All right, thanks a lot, Caitlin. The Okaloosa Sheriff's Office on their Facebook page just about 15 minutes ago saying, contrary to some recent national news reports, Okaloosa County bridges are not closed at this time. So if that is information that you had out there from somewhere, Okaloosa County Sheriff's Office says they do not have bridges closed at this time.
Well, the one mentioned was the Mid-Bay Bridge, so that's still open. Is that what we're led to believe? And 331?
And 331, that was in Walton County?
Walton County.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we'll sort that out. Where are we now?
Do want to report, too, that, we've been looking at some of the images from Panama City, and certainly our hearts, prayers, just thoughts go out to everyone there and what they're dealing with right now, and certainly what they will be looking at in the aftermath of this storm. But Cox Cable confirming that both of the Panama City TV stations, that being WMBB, the ABC affiliate, and WJHG, the NBC affiliate, are both off the air because of the hurricane. And so they have no television signals coming into that area at this time. Now, on their Facebook page, WJHG says the station, which is located on Front Beach Road, sustained roof damage, but there were no reports of injuries there. So that is one little bit of good news out of that situation.
A little while ago, we talked to Santa Rosa County Sheriff Bob Johnson, who indicated that the Navarre bridge to Navarre Beach had been closed down over the causeway, trapping maybe 75 to 100 cars, sightseers there. Don't know if they were measuring that bridge and the winds at the top of that bridge every 15 or 20 minutes, he says, and once those subside below tropical storm force, which is at 39 miles an hour, they'll reopen. We have not had an update on that.
Right, and the Garcon Point Bridge also. And
Garcon Point as well. We have power outages, sporadic on the western side of the Panhandle right now. We can bring those maps up. I don't know if we've got, that's, the print's a little too small for me to see the totals. 116,000 people out. Gulf Power customers, Oriette, is that? Okay, so that's the westernmost counties of northwest Florida with 116,000 customers without power right now, scattered in Escambia, Santa Rosa, Okaloosa counties, even in Pensacola, 2,843 I'm looking at right now. Estimated restoration at 5:15 for at least the Pensacola and Escambia County areas. I think restoration time will be a little bit longer the closer you get towards that storm. We've got Duke Power map as well. Duke Energy in Leon County and the central part of the Panhandle with perhaps, we're going to pull that up in just a second, but we're hearing that a lot of power outages are being reported there as well. But as we said, 4,000 power crews staged and ready to go and to fly into those areas from Escambia County. What you're looking at now is from Duke Energy and the power outages that got reported. We don't have numbers associated with each of those spots right now, but tells the story. Suffice it to say, many customers, if not all the customers along the coast, have been knocked off, and no indication as of yet of how long that's going to be or when power is going to be restored. Obviously, they've got to wait until it's safe and the winds die down before anybody can head out there. You don't want to make matters worse by
also, you know, they caution customers that, you know, it depends on the type of damage that has been done and the type of repairs that are going to be needed. The good thing is we have crews all across the state and a large contingent of those right up the street from the television station here at the Pensacola Interstate Fairgrounds who are, they're mustered, they are ready to go as soon as it is safe for them to get on the road and get to the various points. Right now we're looking at some more damage from Panama City, but these crews will be moving into these areas to restore power as quickly as they can.
Reminder, if you're listening to us in central Gulf Coast, in Tallahassee, Leon County, and points further east, and you're picking us up on your cell phone or a battery device or whatever the case may be very careful with those generators. Do not run them in the garage. Do not run them inside the house. Make sure they are very well ventilated. Obviously, you know you're not supposed to connect those directly to your power supply in your house. When the power comes back on, that can cause some problems. It can cause electrocutions, it can cause some shocks and other problems. Be extremely careful with the use of those things. Do not overextend them. Keep them well away, well ventilated. Every storm, we will get reports of people who are brought to the hospital because of carbon monoxide poisoning. It's colorless, it's odorless, you don't know it until it's too late and you pass out. Carbon monoxide poisoning from those generators being too close to your home or the fumes being sucked into a window. Please be careful. If you've got those generators running, be careful with them.
And Bob, you know, as the storm moves through here and gets out of here, and that can't happen anytime too soon, we see the damage. We can already anticipate what people are going to be going through. Many of us have had similar experiences, and people want to help. That is one of the incredible things about this place in which we live, is that people will want to help. We're always reminded that the best way to help is with your financial contributions. Governor Scott has already activated Florida's disaster fund for Hurricane Michael. You can access that fund, get information about it by going to floridadisasterfund.org. If you're ready to make your contributions now, you can text disaster to 20222. Again, you can text disaster to 20222 or visit their website, floridadisasterfund.org. And again, the financial contribution is always the best way to help.
I recall those images from Katrina. So many people here wanting to help, and piles and piles and piles of clothes and baby goods that all were thrown out, that were left on the side of the highways, but they had no place to bring them, no idea what to do with them. The best of intentions, and they fell short. So the cash is the best thing to do. Well, that said, we're going to go to Wakulla County right now, where Mike Magnoli is standing by. Further, oh, he's not live. He filed this report just a few minutes ago, apparently. Thanks, Oriette.
Well, we've had to change location since the last time we checked in with you. We're about 15 minutes from the coast now, but we're still in Wakulla County. And the gusts of winds that we're seeing here, strong enough to knock over the trash cans at this little gas station. What I'll have my photojournalist Chris Hinson do right now is give you a look at the trees across the way. So, okay, we're still a little bit a ways from landfall of Michael. And this is inland, but this will give you a sense of what the wind is doing here. Trees getting thrashed around, some signs getting thrashed around.
All right, we were having some technical glitches there. Again, those things not unanticipated in situations like this, weather conditions being what they are. Renee Benenati, a while ago, made her way to the Gulf Power warehouse and has this report for us.
Right now, we're in Gulf Power's warehouse in Pensacola, where, as you can see, we're surrounded by hundreds of boxes. Now, these are filled with items like this polymer insulator that are going to be packed up and sent with workers responding to heavily hit areas. Right now, we have Gordon Paulus with Gulf Power. Thank you so much for joining us, who's going to give us a little bit more information about this. First off, can you tell us a little bit about what is going on here?
Well, we created 6 storm kits before the storm season even started. And what we have done, we have deployed them out already ahead of the storm. We sent 4 to the Panama City area, 2 to the Central District in Fort Walton Beach, and we have 1 here in the Western District or the Pensacola area. We've sent 1 more out today. We're working on 2 more because what we do with these is we stage them out in the areas where the damage occurs, and then the linemen will come and knowing what they need to get, such as bolts, cutouts, transformers, poles, wires, you name it. There's over 90 different items that we have. And each kit probably has 120,000 different pieces. And so the linemen will get these pieces and they'll use that to make the repairs. And it makes it more efficient and it allows us to get the customer's power restored sooner.
And once again, as you were saying, how does this affect the response time?
It's a more efficient way of getting it to the linemen to make the repairs quicker. It's there at the site, so they don't have to go to it. We bring it to them. And we're also bringing down materials throughout the next few days from other parts of the country to keep the materials going for our line workers.
I know people in the area are going to be wondering what they can expect for power outages. What can you tell us about?
Well, here in the Pensacola area, we're still getting some tropical storm force winds, but our crews are already working to restore those outages. But we have to get out of the bucket trucks when it reaches 30 miles an hour, just for safety purposes. But when the winds die down and there's more outages, we will continue to work here in the Pensacola area today and tonight until we get everything restored. And then as we determine the extent of the damage over in Fort Walton Beach and Panama City, then we will start repairs there as soon as it's safe to do so.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Gordon. Once again with Gulf Power. Now, as you can see, they're working around the clock and very diligently to make sure that everybody stays safe and has power throughout the storm. For now, reporting in Pensacola, Renee Benenati, Channel 3 News.
All right, thank you very much, Renee. We have Santa Rosa Sheriff Bob Johnson is back on the phone with us. Sheriff, what is the latest there?
Right now, Sue, we just opened up the Navarre Beach Bridge. The wind gusts are down to 25, so we've opened that bridge back, but Garcon Bridge is still currently closed.
Have you? What are the wind speeds you're recording on that on the Garcon Point Bridge now, Sheriff?
The last one we did, which was I think about 20 minutes ago, was 42.
So we're still seeing tropical storm force winds there too. Any other reports of problems, roadways, drivers? We've had relatively few reports of any kind of significant problems in Northwest Florida as a result of the storm. Is that true?
That's true. Santa Rosa County, we've had very few reports of that. The most things we've been responding to, believe it or not, during the hurricane are domestic disturbances. So I guess people being cooped up sometimes isn't all that great. But roads are open. We don't know of any road closures. No trees are down that we've heard of. And so it's going relatively smooth.
What about the shelter situation over there that you have? I wasn't able to get the numbers on the people who actually took advantage of the shelters. Do you have any idea?
No, Sue, I haven't heard. I can probably get that for you because we have a deputy posted at each one, but I haven't heard, and I haven't heard of any overcrowding or anything like that at the shelters either. So I know they're not overflowing, that's for sure.
The Emergency Operations Center at the Sheriff's Office, and how long do you think the emergency activation in Santa Rosa County will last? Do you have any idea about that?
I don't think it's going to be too much longer, Bob. I think probably if I was a betting man, I'd say we're probably close it up by 4 or 5 p.m.
And people still heeding the warnings to stay off the roads? Is it relatively calm out there as it was earlier today?
It is. I'm seeing a few more cars, but it's still traffic is way down, especially on Highway 98 in Navarre. Very few cars out, which is a good thing. People heeding the warning, and really, to be honest with you, there's not a whole lot to see, anyways. Like I said, no down trees. There's not a whole lot going on, which is the way we like it.
Further reasons, as you're saying that, we're looking at pictures from, I'm assuming, Panama City Beach or Mexico Beach with some roofing coming off of buildings and some intense winds blowing palm trees well over. Just some pretty spectacular pictures right now. Sheriff Bob Johnson, anything else you want to pass along to our viewers before we let you go?
We're going to measure the winds on the Avalon or the Garcon Point Bridge at 2 o'clock. And we anticipate that we will be opening up at 2 o'clock. But that's not a guarantee. We're going to take one more reading, and then we'll let you know.
All right, Sheriff, I just wanted to mention something again. I couldn't help but notice, I guess, the tone of your voice when we spoke a little bit earlier, and I asked you whether any of your staff would be ready to deploy and go to the aid of the individuals farther to the east of us, and you said, oh, they will need us. And I don't know, that's just kind of, that's the way it goes, that we do reach out and we make ourselves available. What type of assistance do you anticipate sending?
Well, right now, the crew that we're going to initially send over, they're going to deal with infrastructure issues. Mm-hmm. They're taking portable radios and repeater systems, so in case their radio systems are down at whatever county we go to, that we'll be able to hand out portables to their deputies or their officers, and they'll be able to have radio communications. And we also take chainsaws to assist in clearing roadways, because as you know, when we had Ivan hit in 04, that was the biggest problem, was trying to get down 87 because all the trees were down. So that's going to be the initial team, and then when that team gets relieved, the second team that goes in is more or less patrol officers that will assist them in answering calls while their deputies or their officers go and try to fix their homes and take care of their own families.
All right, sir. I know it's just kind of doing what you do, but it's just heartwarming and reassuring to hear. We appreciate it, and safe travels to your crew.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And we'll call back and update you on the Garcon Bridge here in a few minutes.
All right. Thank you, Sheriff.
Appreciate that. Let's bring that video to the right, full screen orient if we could. And could you tell me where we're getting that feed from? Panama City, and I'm assuming that the building that we saw lose its roof was in Panama City as well? All right, so closest to the eye and where it came ashore and closest to the highest speed winds, you're seeing some of the damage from Panama City and some intense winds and driving rain. I think they were expecting, what, 5-6 inches of rain in Panama City or so, and you're seeing some of that come down now.
Well, and you know, we had spoken earlier with Matthew Seedorf in Panama City, and he was in that 20-story building, and he said literally they felt the building swaying, and they got to the stairwell, made their way down the stairs, and kind of hunkering down on one of the lower floors. You know, you can only imagine just how frightening that had to be.
Well, you could hear the anxiety in his voice, and we should tell our audience that, you know, every crew that we send out in the field and every crew that we touch base with and contributes to this newscast that's being broadcast across northern Florida right now, the first thing we tell them is to be safe. Do not do anything that puts you in harm's way. You saw Christina, you know, looking around to make sure that there wasn't any flying debris when she was reporting from Miramar Beach. nobody's asking anyone to go into a situation that's going to put them in jeopardy and to be safe first. So want to pass that along. So safety first, and obviously, was it Matthew you said that was in Panama City? You could,
yes.
you could hear.
You could.
Live from ABC News, this is continuing coverage of Hurricane Michael.
You're watching ABC News Live. I'm David Wright, and we have for you now continuing coverage of Hurricane Michael as this devastating storm moves into Florida and across the South. Let's go first to Sam Champion. He is in Miami, but one of the few people in Florida that's high and dry at this moment. Hi, Sam.
Hey, David, how are you? That's right, we're in the Bureau. But let's talk about this storm. Again, historic landfall of a major storm. And the category will be discussed by the Hurricane Center now. We know that at landfall near Mexico Beach, this storm had a 155-mile-per-hour wind. Anything in excess of 156 is officially a Category 5. That's the top scale that we rank hurricanes on. This is one of the top 3 storms to make impact in the U.S. Coastline. There was one back in 1935 that was unnamed. There was Camille. There's another one I can't even think of what it is right now, but there's only 3 that beat this storm in strength. And so this will be a major, major story when we can get crews in and outside of the place that they've been sheltering to see what's going on outside. Now, we have a lot of people left. It's not just landfall of this storm on a shoreline. This storm is going to go on all the way until Thursday into Friday and affect hundreds of thousands, if not millions of people. So let's talk about what's going on with it. You can see that we have the tornado warning out now. We have a large, in the area shaded in yellow, tornado watch. That's for northern Florida, the Florida Panhandle, also south and central Georgia. And we see this all the time with landfalling hurricanes. The spin of the storm as it moves in brings in these turbulent lines of storms that just spin off as well into other little areas of thunderstorms and drop a tornado very quickly. Now, usually they're on the low side of tornadoes. Usually they're F1s, F2s, F0s, and they're in and they're out and they're quick because they haven't had time to really get a run like we see when they're running through Tornado Alley in the middle of the country. They're just popping down, doing a lot of damage and popping up. Unfortunately, that doesn't help you in these areas because it's torrential rainfall. A quick pop down on a hurricane that takes a building out or takes a roof off puts you in the worst situation, and we've got that one near Gainesville, Florida right now. We are likely to see a lot more of these. So that's one of the things I want everybody, all of our friends who are in Georgia and also in North Florida to pay attention to are these thunderstorms and the possibility of tornadoes now. The amazing thing with this storm, David, another one, and the list just keeps going, we've got a 150-mile-per-hour wind in the center of this storm. The entire center of circulation is over land. This storm has no connection with water, and it is still a Category 4 hurricane at 150 miles per hour. It's amazing to watch this happen. And the one thing we need to tell people who are beneath that, they will have all the impacts that you would see in a coastal area when a storm made it landfall as well. They might not have a big storm surge, but they will have rapid flooding. They'll be dropping an awful lot of rain. We're talking about 6 to 10 inches of rain here. So the flash flooding will be a problem. The winds will be a problem and very damaging and destructive. This is the kind of wind that can destroy even a well-crafted, well-built building, can take a roof off of them just like that. And many of these buildings, for folks in Florida, the building codes, David, were reset after Andrew. So, but they only went back, you only had to retrofit to a building back into the 50s. So the problem with some of these buildings in this part of Florida that haven't faced a storm this strong in their history is you've got a lot of people who are not up to that new standard, a lot of construction that was done in the 50s that hasn't been fixed. So we're going to see buildings flattened. Where Ginger was in Mexico Beach, we're going to see buildings completely taken off the cement floor pattern there. They're just going to be gone. And when we go inland, we're going to have an incredible amount of trees down, power outages, and structural damage from this storm as well, because we're going to see it weaken to a 2. It'll be an inland hurricane in central and south Georgia as a Category 2, and it may even hold on to hurricane strength as it travels into South Carolina. So this is a tough time. Look at this here. I know, it's unbelievable. So from Albany, Georgia to Macon, Georgia, this could stay a Cat 1, Cat 2 storm all the way through. That's trees down. These people are not ready for that, and they need to know to be able to seek safe shelter as soon as they hear that wind move through the area. Look at Columbus. We're talking about this possibly being, or Columbia, South Carolina. We're looking at this possibly being hopefully we'll see a tropical storm, but it could still be a hurricane as it makes that move. A tropical storm, we believe, in Charlotte. In Raleigh, I'd like to believe at that point it is downgraded to a tropical storm. But the problem here in central South Carolina and also North Carolina is the predicted rainfall. Remember, these are areas that not long ago had about 15 to 30 inches of rain with Florence. So now an additional 6 to 10 inches of rain in those areas, David. We focus all of our energy now in Georgia, the panhandle of Florida inland, in South Carolina and North Carolina to get people ready for what this storm will do before it exits the coastline, probably Thursday night into Friday morning. It's moving fast, but it's going to be a very, very damaging storm.
It sounds like it's moving through the area. Go ahead. Sorry.
No, go ahead, David. The one thing I just wanted to point out were these flash flood watches.
My question to you is this. It's always been my understanding that hurricanes gain strength because of warm water, like we find in the Gulf of Mexico at the moment, and that's why this storm gained strength as it hit Florida. But then that they lose strength as they're on land. Is this one simply moving too fast, kind of like a bowling ball going through the south?
Perfect analogy. So, you know, if you've got something that's in motion, and normally what happens is these things will churn and feed on warm, deep waters. They'll find those currents. You'll get that warm moisture in there. You'll build higher cloud tops. You'll tighten up, build more storms, tighten up that eye, and you start to get a stronger storm. Once that storm moves onshore, we normally see a pretty rapid drop in the intensity of the storm because it's battling the land as it goes across. Just spinning across land without getting fed by warm water can sometimes really slow these things down, weaken the thunderstorms. But this one is so strong. Your analogy of the bowling ball is perfect. The only thing that's going to slow down that bowling ball is hitting that pin or hitting the back of the wall of the alley there. And this thing has just got to take time to slow down, drop its spin, and relax a little. And it may be well into Georgia with the center of circulation before we see it drop a whole lot.
Wow. ABC's Sam Champion, thank you so much. We're going to ask you to stand by if you could, but I want to bring in Rob Marciano, who joins us by phone from Panama City, Florida. How's it looking, Rob?
We're still in it, David. We've got we've made our way retreated, if you will, into the center of this parking structure, which we've kind of used the last couple of hours as a safe spot. Obviously made of concrete, but has a lot of openings that we can shoot and see and monitor the situation from. But sustained winds, I would imagine, are in the realm of 50 to maybe as high as 70 miles an hour at this point. Obviously, the northwestern eye wall came through us about noontime local, and then shortly after that, when you and I spoke on ABC News Live, we were in the western part of the eye wall. Now we're kind of in the southwestern exiting part of the eye wall. This thing motors off towards the north and east. So the winds are shifting on us. There's still a fair amount of debris that's flying around the streets and parking lots and the property here. And the hotels are and condo buildings and marketplaces are still taking a beating from this wind. So it's ongoing. A lot of times when we deliver the broadcast for these storms, there's so much anticipation and anxiety leading up to actual landfall. Once landfall is made, we start to breathe a little bit, and both the viewers and then the broadcasters will let our guard down. But it's important to know, and I'm sure this point has been made, the back half of this storm can be just as ferocious as the front. So we've got several hours more to go through before we're done.
So, but it sounds like you will soon be seeing the back of this storm. And then it's important to point out that the real work begins, because we'll see exactly how much damage it caused right there. No?
Absolutely. Even though this storm didn't give us a whole lot of warning, I mean, in essence, it was a three-day run-up. Utility crews, FEMA, all the people and resources that come in to help out after the storms, they've been pre-positioned in safer, drier areas, an hour or so from where I am, and then once the storm moves out, they'll come in. There'll be some surveying going on. Obviously, the reporters will go out along with county and city officials to survey the damage once it's safe to do so, probably right around nightfall tonight. And then tomorrow will be the big push for utility crews and support crews to come in here, and any first responders, obviously, that are needed from about now until the overnight. They'll obviously be called upon. But we're still, from what we've been told, the first responders are still sheltering in place. So any calls that they have gotten, they're not going out until they feel it's safe for them to do so.
Wow. ABC's Rob Marciano in Panama City, Florida. Thanks very much, Rob. Let's show a tweet that came out from Ginger Z. She's in Mexico City, Florida, one of the main spots where the hurricane made landfall. Crazy first signs of damage, she writes. And just look at that. That's the view from the back of the hotel where she has been perched. Damage from the backside of our condo building in Mexico City. Hashtag Michael. Michael is causing lots of damage in Florida, and in other states it presumably will cause damage as well as it moves its way up the coast. We have a report from Terrence Fowler. He is a reporter with the ABC affiliate WPLG. He is reporting from Apalachicola. Let's hear what he's seeing.
Yeah, certainly a lot of debris behind me. Take a look. A lot of the fronds from the palm trees sort of blew from the trees onto the ground. So you have that debris here in this parking lot. You have it on the roads and so many more places throughout Franklin County. The roads, some of them are impassable because of that debris. A lot of the power poles here in this area, they've also snapped. Some power lines are down. So it's a very dangerous situation for the first people who will be out and about, driving around, walking around, things of that nature. You really have to take care, even though power has been out for the past several hours or so. This storm is so devastating. We know that there is talk that this community may not come back online when it comes to power for a couple of weeks. That is true for some of the hardest hit areas. Well, we've been checking in with the Franklin County Emergency Management Office, and there are reports of some big trees that have fallen onto homes. There are reports of some properties that have been flooded, and there are even reports of some roads that are impassable because of all of the water covering the road. The bay is just beyond this last tree line that you see over there. We had a chance to go over to that area earlier today, and literally there were giant waves that were licking the coastline. That water was expected to obviously breach that coastline and come up onto the road. That is true in some points that have been known to flood, especially along Highway 98, which is really the only way in and out of this community. So Franklin County, obviously, we are seeing the effects here along the Florida Panhandle. We can also share with you that that storm, Hurricane Michael, it made landfall just to the west of here, about 63 miles west of here, near a community called Mexico Beach. So still not right up on us, but we are on the dirty side here in Franklin County. And the threat all along, just outside of the wind and the rain, has been that storm surge. 9 to 12 feet this community was expecting, a deadly number for any community to endure. We're still waiting for emergency managers to share with us any reports of any injuries. That information has not come in yet, but we're still in the thick of it here in this area. Back to you guys.
Terrell Fournay reporting there. He's a reporter with ABC affiliate WPLG, reporting from Apalachicola. Let's hear now from Victor Oquendo, the ABC correspondent in Tallahassee, Florida. Victor, are you beginning to feel the brunt of it?
It's on its way, that's for sure, David. Conditions are quickly deteriorating here in Tallahassee. We've learned that the radar that services the city has actually gone down, so they're now relying on some other systems here. There are also a number of road closures in this area already. You might be able to hear a siren going off here behind me, so I guess it means that it's still safe right now for first responders to be out there on the roads, but that will change quickly. So right now, or just moments ago, I actually want to show you this, just as those sirens make their way past us here. A pretty good sized branch just came down on that maroon car right there at the end of this parking lot here. That's been the major concern for Tallahassee all along. Once those strong winds start making their way through here, trees will start coming down and they'll bring power lines down with them. So for that reason, they've had crews pre-positioned to get the city to get back up and running once the storm does make its way through. Just to put this in perspective, county officials not long ago said that Tallahassee has not seen a storm like this in more than a century. So they just wanted to make it clear to everyone who has not left and has decided to stay home. They're telling everyone right now to stay in place, shelter, and stay safe, because right now Hurricane Michael headed right this way. It's just a matter of time before we start to feel those hurricane force winds. David?
Victor, thank you. Tallahassee, obviously not just any city in Florida, but the state capital. What provisions have state lawmakers made? Are they still around or have they evacuated?
Well, right now you've got a ton of people actually at the Emergency Operations Center. And it was just 2 years ago that Hurricane Hermine hit, and that knocked out power to some 75,000 customers, did a ton of damage to the electrical grid. So for that reason, they've got more than 1,000 utility crews out here. So you've got crews that are going to help clear the roads, crews that will help restore power. They want to make sure that they'll be able to get Tallahassee back up and running as soon as possible, once, of course, it is safe to do so.
Sure, the people that need to be there are still in place. ABC's Victor Oquendo, thank you so much. Let's turn to Kenneth Moten. He's warm and dry at FEMA headquarters. Kenneth, you've got an interview there.
David, I do have an interview here. I'm standing by with the FEMA Deputy Administrator, Dr. Daniel Kanuski, who is going to give us the latest information. Obviously, Michael has made landfall in the Panhandle of Florida. The FEMA response at this point, obviously FEMA also waiting to see and monitoring and working with state and local officials.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. So we pre-positioned a lot of assets before the storm made landfall. That includes personnel, equipment, and commodities. They're staged just outside the area and ready to flow in as soon as the hurricane moves on. That said, our top priority, as soon as the hurricane does move, is going to be search and rescue. Working with our state and local partners and other federal partners, many of whom you see seated right behind me here, are all going to be ready with the high water trucks, with helicopters and other response assets to make sure that we can help those who either chose not to evacuate or simply could not get out in time.
Talk about how large this federal response is. I understand 3,000 FEMA employees who are stationed in strategic areas of the Southeast.
Mm-hmm. That's right. Thousands of federal employees from all of these federal departments and agencies, including those 3,000 FEMA employees. But yeah, it includes the Department of Defense, so active duty military, and the National Guard. So National Guard makes up a huge number of responders in Florida, as well as the other impacted states. And they're really going to be the ones that are going to be the first ones there to provide support to the local officials. Remember, those are the firefighters, the police officers, and the paramedics who are, answer those 911 calls every day. This day is, I'd say, no different. They're still going to be answering those phone calls, but they can't do it until after the storm passes.
What are you seeing right now after Michael has made landfall?
Well, first of all, it made landfall. It's an extraordinarily strong storm. You're talking 155 miles an hour. That's 1 mile an hour short of a Category 5 hurricane. That's the same strength as Hurricane Maria making landfall. So an incredibly strong storm. So what we have seen so far is what we've seen on TV. It's wind damage, storm surge, these are all expected impacts. But we won't know the full scope of the impacts until after it passes and we can actually get in there and see what happened.
So much focus on Florida, rightly so, but I know you're also monitoring what happens throughout the Southeast as it marches its way through Georgia, impacting Alabama and the Carolinas as well, which is still recovering from Florence.
You're absolutely right. And beyond Florida, listen, it's going to hit Georgia as a Category 2 hurricane. That's an extraordinarily strong hurricane for Georgia, one that they probably haven't seen in our lifetimes, one that will have severe impacts, and one that they need to be prepared for right now, frankly. They're going to be getting tropical storm force winds with full-on hurricane winds here later today.
Talk about how well you work with the state and local officials when it comes to something like this. Obviously, they're first responders. They're getting the brunt of it, even though you have those thousands of FEMA employees there. But talk about how you guys work well with those state and local officials.
Yeah, we are absolutely there to support them. If they have any gaps or shortfalls, we're there to help support those. So as I said, the high water vehicles are something that they needed. So we found those. We sourced those from throughout the federal government to make sure that they had those. We had a daily video teleconference, in fact, just today, a couple hours ago, where we talked to the state emergency managers and say, where are you right now? What do you need? How can we help? And we have a great, very positive and open dialogue with all of those state emergency managers.
I'm curious for you. You told me earlier that I think your first storm was Maria when you took over this post as Deputy Administrator. Any surprises for you when it comes to this storm season and this storm in particular?
Yeah, well, every hurricane's different. This one, it got spun up so quickly. 3 days ago, it was a tropical depression, was expected to make landfall as a tropical storm. Look where we are right now. 3 days later, with the strongest hurricane to ever strike the panhandle of Florida. It's the strongest hurricane of the season and one of the strongest hurricanes of all time to make landfall in the United States.
You mentioned that fast approaching storm. People were not able to get out of the storm zone fast enough. And I know the administrator of FEMA, Brock Long, said he wished that more people had gotten out in a timely manner, but because it was fast approaching, there were people, especially those who didn't have the means to get out fast, couldn't get out. Talk about those concerns, and obviously FEMA is well aware that there are people, a number of people, who just didn't have the means to get out.
Well, I hope that those who had the opportunity to evacuate did evacuate, and I hope that those who were in mandatory evacuation zones had the opportunity to get out. For those that didn't, they were able to hopefully shelter in place in a sturdy location, whether it be their home or a shelter that opened in the wake of, or in advance of the hurricane. Obviously, with Florence, we had a lot more time to plan, didn't we? We had a week to get everybody out, we being the state, the federal government, and NGOs. This time we had to move much more quickly. I will say that especially the NGOs really stepped up to the plate here. They opened up shelters rapidly and made sure that those who were in the danger zone were able to have a safe place to go. So we just don't know at this time how many people took advantage of that.
How soon after, I know you can't tell the future, but what's the hope for how fast you guys can respond after this storm really pushes through the southeast?
So whether it be us or the state and local responders, we need to wait until tropical storm force winds subside. So as soon as those winds subside, we will go in. So you're looking at tomorrow for us to get in there for the first time to see really what happened. Yeah.
Have you lost contact with any area in particular, or are you in constant contact, or as much as possible, with state and local?
Yeah, we're in contact with the state constantly, and then the state is, of course, in contact with the local government. So, you'd have to ask the state, how much contact they've had with every local government. But at this point, we've had good contact with the state. We've had good contact with our FEMA employees and other federal employees on the ground.
Final question for you. What's next, and how do we proceed over the next, I know you touched on it, but just to wrap up here, what's next and how do we proceed over the next few hours and next couple of days?
Yep. Well, the real activity is going to be tomorrow when all those pre-positioned assets are going to start to move into the impact area. And that's going to be those personnel, it's going to be our commodities and equipment to make sure that we're providing those assets to those in need, as well as to conduct search and rescue. So there's no doubt that search and rescue assets are going to be really busy. That could be the U.S. Coast Guard, it could be the National Guard, it could be a variety of assets, both helicopters and high water vehicles. They're going to want to make sure that they get into those hard-hit areas and see if anybody needs to be rescued.
FEMA Deputy Administrator Dr. Daniel Kanuski, thank you. I know you're a busy guy right now, so I really appreciate you taking the time. David, I'm going to send it back to you.
ABC's Kenneth Moten there talking with the FEMA Deputy Director. Thank you so much for all that information. We have some pictures coming in of some of the damage that we're seeing along the Florida coast. I believe these are from Panama City. You can see there a fence line that's clearly been ripped out, power lines that are down, and we've had reports in Mexico City, Florida, that entire homes were swept away. They're boring in there on what appears to be a power line as well as some sort of smokestack, perhaps. Hard to say, but really the real work of this hurricane will begin once those winds die down and people are able to get outside and actually survey the damage. Clearly, there is going to be some serious damage from this. But let's turn now to ABC's Eva Pilgrim. Eva is standing by, and I believe it's beautiful and sunny where you are, Eva, but the sky is about to fall. You're in Charleston.
We're in Charleston, South Carolina. There's some clouds here now. It's been sunny. It was raining earlier today. Nothing to do with Hurricane Michael coming on land, just the standard rain that's part of the pattern for this time of year here in the Carolinas. But the reason we're here in Charleston is because there's real concern about the weather that's headed our way because of this hurricane. And one of the major concerns here is the flooding in this downtown Charleston area. They're also watching for possible tornadoes to turn up as this weather system starts to move this way. But the flooding, one of the major issues that they're watching. And the reason for that is just to that direction over there, that is where the Cooper River dumps here into the harbor here in Charleston. ahead of me, where you can't see right now, there's another river, the Ashley River, that dumps. It sort of wraps around this harbor here in Charleston. And even on a good day, a sunny day, when it rains really hard, parts of downtown Charleston are prone to flooding. Now, we are in what's called a king tide cycle. That's when the Earth is a little closer to the moon and the high tide is actually higher than normal. And so all of this rain from the hurricane is pushing this way. The tide is higher, the storm surge is higher. That's going to kick up the water that's actually pushing into this harbor, and there is real concern that the flooding will be more severe because of that high tide. And the high tide is going to happen tomorrow about 10 o'clock in the morning, just as this hurricane, which will likely be a tropical storm at that point, is pushing through, dumping inches of rain. The other big story that we have to keep a watch on here, as you may remember, Hurricane Florence just came through this area and dumped an incredible amount of rain across the two Carolinas. A lot of those areas still inundated with the rain. The ground is saturated in those areas, and so any extra rain, there's not really a whole lot of places for it to go. And so they are going to be watching through those parts of the Carolinas that saw some flooding from Hurricane Florence, to see how the rain and the downpour, the ultimate effects in those areas as well, David. This area just waiting and watching at this point for this storm to come their way.
ABC's Eva Pilgrim in Charleston, South Carolina. Enjoy the sunshine while you can, Eva. We're going to turn back to ABC's Sam Champion in just a second. But before we do, I want to play a little snippet of Ginger Z from Mexico City. This is from a tweet she just sent out.
Backside of our condo, we'd seen a lot on the front, but seeing all of this damage, more than just snapped trees, so much debris. Where homes were, they are not. They are moved. They are, that one there, off of its foundation, in the middle of a road. Cars everywhere and underwater. It's really wild to see in its raw moments.
ABC's Ginger Z in Mexico City Beach, Florida. Let's turn back to Sam Champion. Sam, the biggest storm that I can remember in my news lifetime is Hurricane Katrina. This storm, bigger than that. Obviously, the situation was kind of unique there in that the levees broke, but can we expect damage on that scale this time around?
Well, you know, David, when everyone says each hurricane is different, and we totally mean it, that all of the problems that came along with Katrina when it moved in, the floodwaters and their Lake Pontchartrain, and the return of water when the storm left, the water that came streaming down and re-flooded and even flooded areas of New Orleans that hadn't been flooded at first. So that is not the problem that we'll have with this storm. With this storm, the water problems were this first impact, that higher than normal water up to 14 feet, we believe, and we still haven't gotten into the Big Bend area. We still haven't gotten into these areas to know, and haven't seen a report there, how bad this storm surge flooding was. So now with this storm, it becomes the wind damage. And just as Ginger showed you all of that, that was a combination of that tidal surge and the wind damage as she was walking around showing you houses off their foundation, trees down, cars moved across the street. We're going to see a lot of that as wind-driven as well. Let me quickly show you another problem that we've got popping up so that people know it's not just right near this storm that we're having troubles today. So look at where we've got this tornado watch. All areas in yellow. That's from North Florida all the way through South and Central Georgia. Now, we just had a tornado warning near Camp Blanding. That's a little bit south of the Jacksonville area. But I also want to tell you, and I know Samantha's running the graphic, but way down here at the bottom of the screen, Sarasota, Florida, we just had a tornado pop up there and dissipate. So that's where, there you go. So Tampa, Sarasota, right in this area. So look how far away that is from the storm, but you can see these bands of rain that keep coming in and wrapping around that storm. So we're going to see a lot of this all the way through Florida. I would extend that. I want the Weather Service to kind of extend that well down into Central Florida, because we are going to have those bands running across them. Potential is there for tornadoes in any of those thunderstorm bands that are connected to this hurricane. hurricane. Still a hurricane. Still with winds at about 150 miles an hour. That's as of about 30 minutes ago, and we'll get a fresh update on some of that soon. But take a look at the center. The center has no connection to water whatsoever, and it's moved in. We have an extreme wind warning. This has never been issued for this area, and this is for winds that are in excess of 113 miles an hour. And we'll see it. We've got it going on right now. And so if you guys still have signals, or you're watching us on mobile devices that will have signals even long after your TV doesn't have a signal in some cases, I want you to realize that this is going on. Inland areas in Florida all the way up to the Alabama and Georgia border. This area right here still has the potential of having that 100 to 113 mile per hour winds, and we think it will happen. That's wind damage that'll take the roof off of buildings. It'll ruin good, strong construction even. So you need to make sure that you're isolated and well put into the center of your home, away from any windows, because windows will go just like that. Now, we're looking at these wind speeds, and this model was run when our belief was that this storm would be a Cat 2 or Cat 3. Once it made landfall, it would have diminished to that strength. So when you see these wind reports and we say that with this system, we think we'll have that 50 mile per hour wind in Albany, Georgia, it's likely to be higher. We think when that storm is right here, making the connection with Georgia, it'll be a 63 mile per hour wind gust at Tallahassee. It's likely to be higher. So because this storm has stayed together in a stronger fashion than we'd anticipated even watching it come on shore. So as it moves inland, look at all these storms. Atlanta, even a 24 mile per hour wind at 1 o'clock in the morning on Thursday, and in the middle of a complex of thunderstorms according to the model. I believe that'll verify, but I think your wind is going to be higher. So I kind of want everybody along the path here from Macon to Augusta to Atlanta to prepare for the fact that you got a hurricane in Georgia by the time we get into Wednesday night into Thursday, solidly in the landmass of Georgia. Then we want to talk to people in South Carolina and North Carolina as well, which is a very good idea that we've got Eva Pilgrim in that area in Charleston, because so much of this area is still not even at the recovery stage of what happened to them not long ago with Florence. Florence was a flooding storm. This is going to be a wind storm. But even with this wind continuing in those areas, we're still looking at 6 to 10 inches of additional rain on ground that's saturated in the Carolinas, on rivers that have dropped a little bit but are still running a little higher than they should be if it wasn't for that flooding in that area, and people haven't had a chance to repair anything much in that area. So it's a big problem all the way up until this storm leaves the coastline of Virginia, somewhere near Norfolk, by the time we get to late Thursday night into Friday. Storm surge. We saw some of the images from where Ginger was. Now, cameras are everything. So where are people? People have been in Apalachicola. We've seen images from there. Mexico Beach, we've seen images from there. Panama City, we've seen images from there. In this part that they call the Big Bend of Florida, where we were looking for potentially some of the highest water levels with storm surge, up to 14 feet all the way through here, we don't have cameras in here yet. Now, the good news is this is a lot of wild land. You've got the Apalachicola Forest. It's a park right there. So people, most of the people we're hoping got out of that area. But it'll be very interesting, David, to see as we watch the next few hours, certainly 6 hours from now, when people are able to get outside along the coastline and get into these areas, just how much water moved through. Because when we're talking about 9 to 14 feet, I'm 6 feet tall. So we're talking about so much more water than that, more than a story of water in some cases in areas at high tide. And then put the waves on top of that, David, because that's what we were expecting
6 to 14 feet, so that's twice your size.
Yeah.
Wow.
Oh, yeah, exactly. And then put the waves on top of that, because that's just the surge of the water. That's the higher than normal water that's running with the storm. Because remember, the storm is pounding on the ocean all the time. It's exerting a downward force on the ocean, particularly at this category. So when you press water down, if you did that in your bathtub or in your sink, you'll see the water lift on the edge of the sink, and you'll see those waves run to the edge of the sink. And that's exactly what's happening with this storm, or happened with this storm while it was in water prior to landfall.
All right. Wind, water, flooding, and tornadoes on top of it all. A lot to be concerned about here. I don't know if you got return where you are, Sam, but we have a piece of video of just the power of the wind alone. Let's have a quick look at that.
Okay.
You see it rip the roof right off that house, and that's presumably a fairly well-constructed house. These are very fierce winds. Just 2 miles an hour short of Category 5, is it?
Well, yeah, I mean, basically, when they say in excess of 156 is when you get to a Category 5. 156 is that borderline area. This came in at 155. So that is devastating. Even secure buildings don't maintain their wall structure. They certainly don't maintain their roof structure very often when hit with a wind like that. And we don't mean gusts, because you're going to see gusts. People are going to measure gusts in this storm. Look at that. Look at that roof go.
And presumably
and
those people on the Florida coastline. Presumably those people on the Florida coastline built with hurricanes in mind. As you get farther inland, as you've pointed out, the building codes aren't quite prepared for that because they don't see this very often.
Right, they never really face it. And though any building has to make code, you know, inspectors are out there to make sure that they have to make code. But buildings that were built prior to that retrofit, which was in the 50s, and there's lots of them in Florida. It was a popular time to build in the 50s in Florida. So there's lots of structures that haven't been updated. When you see the roof go in a building like this and it takes the wall with it, that's a good hurricane clip. That's a roof that is well clipped to the wall. But that wind was so powerful that when it got under the roof, it didn't break at the clip. It broke at the wall.
Wow.
And that's an incredible, powerful wind. And we're going to see winds very close to that in inland areas. And it's not going to be unusual for us when we go back and look at this to see wind gusts like 175.
Wow.
But that's a gust. The sustained winds here were 155.
Sam Champion, thank you so much for your insights into this storm, as always. We're going to continue our coverage of this devastating Hurricane Michael by going now to the ABC affiliate in Tallahassee, Florida, WTXL.
So we still have the winds that are increasing, especially in some of our western areas, and we do have blanks on some of the observation points. It could be a matter of delayed receiving of data through the interwebs, and it also could be an indication that some of the observation points are failing and not communicating. So that's not a surprise given what's been going on, that perhaps some of these observation points have gone offline for whatever reason because of our storm situation. So it wouldn't surprise me if maybe a few more areas are lost when it comes to getting the real-time data. But the recent sustained wind in Tallahassee was just recently clocked at 41 miles per hour. Steady, sustained tropical storm force wind. It's on the lower end of the scale, but it does tend to match the expectations for the capital city when it came to the potential sustained winds. And those gusts have been even higher in some cases, and perhaps even rivaling what gusts we had during Hurricane Hermine. Now, eastern areas, still some noticeable winds, but you are a little farther away from the core of the system, even though tropical storm force winds spread out about 175 miles from the center at last check. There's still going to be times where those winds will increase from their current sustained levels in the Suwannee Valley and along Interstate 75 in southern Georgia. They will increase gradually, but you'll kind of be on the sidelines, especially from roughly Valdosta and Homerville south towards Live Oak, Perry, and Cross City, compared to the intense wind forces that have been occurring in the tri-state area. So even outside here in Midway, those winds have been blowing, and they've been ripping leaves off of the trees outside of our studio. So there is quite a bit of force that's been going on with some of these winds as they will continue to be fierce, and they will continue to drive pockets of damage across the area, something that really none of us would really have to prefer to deal with, not by any means, but it is what it is, and it's what we have at this point, and it's likely to continue because of the expectation of some of these wind fields that will still be fairly potent across our area and just gradually taking its time moving out of our region. Here's how the forecast in the overall expectation of wind spread has been going into the current time frame and how it may be projected in the future, as most areas will at least have the chance for those strong gusts of wind even in our eastern zone. So you could certainly reach the gust range of tropical storm force in our eastern areas, but there will be that trend where some of those gusts will begin to increase even for sections of interior South Georgia, where those oranges indicate where we could have those higher level tropical storm force gusts. And in the short next couple of hours, hurricane force gusts certainly more likely right around the Lake Seminole area and up into the Flint River Valley. And then eventually that hurricane force potential shrinks a bit, but it's still present even by early and late this evening across middle Georgia, while still we may have some lingering effects of tropical storm force winds, even heading towards midnight in some northern and eastern areas.
President Trump plans to visit areas affected by Hurricane Michael Sunday or Monday. Here is more on his plans.
Fill in, like break down, kind of, so it doesn't look as...
We want to get down there as soon as possible. At the same time, I don't want to go down where we're interfering with the people, first responders, the FEMA people. I want them to focus on the storm, not me. So we'll probably look to Sunday or Monday to go down and meet with the governors, meet with everybody, and do what we have to do, like we did in North Carolina, South Carolina, where that worked out really well.
Video just in. Yeah, you're seeing that new Panama City Beach construction building partially collapses in high winds from Hurricane Michael. And Hurricane Michael is projected to make landfall in Georgia in another 2 hours. Officials in Thomas County have already prepared for the worst. Damon Arnold.
Here at the Thomas County Emergency Management Systems, you can see we're all bunkered down. All the windows are covered. That's just how serious the county is taking this storm, and they want community members to do the same. As of right now, Thomas County has one specific plan, and that's to spread the message of how serious Hurricane Michael will be. Several briefings have been held to stay current on Michael's timing and paths, and there's also a 6 p.m. curfew in place, and officials are very serious about enforcing it. No one is to be on the street unless it is an emergency, and Thomas County is going to be one of the...
Amazing.
And the coincidence of that, you know.
Not having a good day. We're going to throw it to Renee Beninati, who is somewhere in Escambia County. Not exactly sure, but I am quite certain she will tell us. Renee, where are you?
Bob, Sue, right now we are in Midway in Santa Rosa County, right on the Bayside, where the rain isn't that bad, but the wind is another story. We've gotten a heavy, strong, just wind coming for a constant 30 minutes just to show you guys how strong this wind is. Take a look at these docks. They have been absolutely destroyed. We're on the Bayside, but with these huge waves, it actually looks like we're at the beach. Just to show you how strong this wind is. And if you take a look over here, if you follow me a little bit, you can see all of the debris that has come from these docks. Now, well, as we said before, ooh, the hat just fell off. While the rain isn't that bad, we are still seeing a lot of wind. We are getting these huge waves. We're about 20 feet away from the shore, but we are still getting splashed. And we are continuing to be out here in Midway. We will continue to bring you guys the latest updates as they become available to us. Bob, Sue.
Renee, thanks. Let's send it further east. We'll go down to Walton County now with Christina Leavenworth. We haven't heard from her in a little while. Christina, how are you faring?
Hey, Bob, things have kind of settled down a little bit here, so we felt safe enough to come back to Miramar Beach. And you can still see that that is an angry Gulf of Mexico out there. But the good news is, and I don't know if it's just because I've been around it all day, it looks a whole lot better to me now than it did this morning. And the winds are starting to die down. We're not seeing as much rain. We did a little bit of driving in the area. I've not seen any immediate damage. And of course, you don't always get those reports until people start to return back to their homes and really see what happened. But just in the area we've been in, we've not seen any major flooding. And again, we're in near Sandestin, Miramar Beach. So other parts of Walton County could be a totally different story. But it is good news here. I don't think that like our hotel didn't lose power. Things are starting to return a little bit back to normal just because stuff is calming down. They still do have that curfew in effect, though, at this time. And the bridges remain closed at this time. We haven't had any word that any of that has been lifted. Bob and Sue?
All right. Alan, just again, with the images that we have, can you kind of walk us through a timeline or a potential timeline for Northwest Florida?
Yeah, well, basically, so what we've been seeing here is a surge coming up, obviously, as the storm was out over the Gulf. So we were seeing a rise in the water. Basically, it's pushing it all up toward the northern Gulf, you know, as we were heading through last night and this morning. And then you're looking at now the imagery, radar imagery of what is Michael, still a hurricane, right over right smack in the middle of the Florida Panhandle. So that making landfall, I guess, you know, a couple of hours ago. And so where you see Christina, where she was there in Walton County, she is seeing improving conditions and better weather as this thing is starting to do a little bit of weakening and really starting to move away from that area. And also, as it does spin counterclockwise, what they're getting there is, as you look at this, to the left side, which is going to be to the west, you know, take the dot in the middle, which is your hurricane eye, and go on the left. Those are winds going to be out of the north. So that's going to hit the water, hit those bays, and actually kind of calm the surf down and make things a little flatter. There are your winds out of the extreme northwest Florida area, which are out of the north, running at, you know, really between 15 and 25 miles per hour, usually a little bit windier along the coast. The video on the right-hand side from Panama City Beach, and, you know, in that area where they took a direct hit, they were seeing the wind come out of different directions. Wind gusts ended up being really quite strong there for Walton and Okaloosa counties. And then on the other side of the storm, you know, as you take it over toward Tallahassee in that zone, they're still seeing a wind out of the south and some potential for some tropical storm force winds. Rainfall, it's heavy in some of those areas, but the rainfall amounts may not be as great as they sometimes can be with a tropical system like this. So you're checking out that system and that storm as it moved on shore. There you go, taking it through back through the morning hours and into this afternoon. Very heavy rain within that eye wall, but it is moving quickly. So really most of the damage and the pictures we're going to be seeing here coming up through the next several hours and stuff, it's going to be from the storm surge, from those areas around Mexico Beach, where storm surge and wave action has basically just beat up those areas along the coast. That particular graphic there, rain vision, that's indicating where some of the heaviest of the rain fell. And as you look through some of those numbers, you're seeing some numbers, you know, on the order of several inches as these numbers are kind of being clicked through. So several inches, yeah, as the storm continues to move, it's taking the rain with it. So it's not a prolonged rain freshwater event. This is going to be a wind damage and a storm surge story, and most of that is going to be really for that area around Mexico Beach, around Panama City, on down toward Apalachicola, where we get some crews down there. A lot of like beautiful homes and big kind of vacation spots down there that have likely sustained some damage. You know, the stronger that they're built, the more they can withstand it, and the higher up they are, more they can withstand that as well. But when you get that surge that's rolling on up into the area, you know, we've already seen some pictures where that surge has come up basically to near the roof line of maybe a single-story home or building. Right now, the word is that the winds are still at 150 miles per hour with individual surface wind gauges, anemometers there on the ground. They're probably not going to quite pick up 150 mile per hour winds, I'd say. It doesn't matter. If you're in that area right now, right in the middle of the Panhandle, it doesn't matter. It is blowing like crazy. It's blowing trees down. And then as we head into tonight, as you look at that forecast track there, that red dot right in the middle is where it's forecast to be, or around that area at 7 o'clock this evening, you know, so in about 4 hours from now, with those winds going down to about 100 miles per hour. And then tomorrow morning, it is farther up into Georgia with winds of basically tropical storm force, 45 mile per hour winds, and it takes that tropical storm into the Carolinas. Now, that is a long time. I mean, look at that. I mean, you're looking at hundreds and hundreds of miles of this thing continuing to maintain that sort of intensity, going from, you know, you don't usually have a hurricane hit the Gulf Coast and then consider it a tropical storm the very next day for North Carolina.
And consider that this can re-strengthen once it hits the Atlantic. I mean, this thing could be around for days more to come. Hopefully, most models, I think, have it going well out to the Atlantic and scooting out of harm's way. But still, this thing is a survivor. It's going to be around for a while.
It's surviving. I mean, you look at that track right there, but it's going to be moving rather quickly, though. So yeah, there we go. As you zoom it out, you're talking about that, Bob, and you'll be able to see how it's expected to go back over the Atlantic, where it could re-strengthen. But once it does move back out that way, and it's moving away from, say, the Carolinas, it's not necessarily going to re-strengthen and then pose a threat on that order, if that makes sense. It's whatever it's going to do here over the next 24, 36 hours as a hurricane and then a tropical storm. But yeah, that's holding together really an incredible eye, and you can see the rain still wrapping back up around Panama City, swinging back around that side, rolling through areas of Bay County, kind of touching that edge there of Walton County as well. So that's a strong north wind there for Walton and Okaloosa counties, and then Bay County still getting hit kind of by the underside of the storm. But the weather's going to be improving dramatically here as we head, through the next hour or so for those places like Mexico Beach, Panama City, and those areas down toward Apalachicola. Already the weather getting a little bit better, and as it's moving in and away from those areas, that storm surge will subside and start to move out and sort of head back out into the Gulf, and all those areas will be just dirty and a huge mess with debris everywhere. And
you're talking about that mess, just looking at some of the images that are Facebook, Instagram, and that are being tweeted as we speak. Mexico Beach, here's one image. I mean, literally, you've got structures that are just nothing but splinters, and some very startling and stark images that many of us certainly remember seeing, but a long rebuilding process. And
it really will be.
Great opportunity to remind people that Governor Scott has already activated the Florida Disaster Fund. People will want to know, and people will reach out to help, and they're saying the best way to do that is with your financial donations. You can make those donations online, also get more information, floridadisasterfund.org. You can also text disaster to 20222, disaster to 20222.
The governor tweeting a little earlier today that he has trucks, he says, loaded with tons of food, water, and other critical supplies ready to move in, including 1.5 million MREs, the meals ready to eat, and 1 million gallons of water poised to bring in. I'm just reading a press release just I think about an hour and a half ago from Gulf Power, and Jeff Rogers estimating that they expect as many as 240,000 of their customers to require a restoration of power service at some point after Michael passes through, but also anticipating having to rebuild the infrastructure of the power grid in some areas that are hit hard. It's not just a matter of replacing a transformer or rewriting a down pole or rewiring lines that have come down. In some cases, they're going to have to do some rebuilding, and that's going to take. And that's just Gulf Power.
The Gulf Power system.
Duke Energy's probably got a bigger problem on its hands, because that's where Leon County and the central part of the Panhandle.
Right. And then you have Chelco and other smaller entities that are out there as well.
So we're talking a lot of people without power, or potentially without power, and it could be for an uncomfortable amount of time, however long that is.
All right, we'll check back in again with Hannah McKenzie, who is in Okaloosa County.
I'm over here at Destin at the Calhoun Beach access point, and I want to show you guys again. Take a look behind me. Last time I was on the beach and I showed you, we had even a little bit more sand than we do right now. So this water is still rising and still getting closer and closer to the back of these condos. And I want to show you guys over here also, the surf's so strong that it has taken out this piling. A little bit of a railing got going on here, just kind of protects the private land of the condo here. But I guess, as you can see, that's been taken out by the strong surf. A lot of folks are heading out here. A lot of folks are up back here, just kind of watching. They're watching the surf come in. They're watching the changing conditions. It has brightened up a lot here, and I will say right now we're getting a little bit of a break of the wind. I'm not sure if that's because I'm being sheltered completely by this condo here, or if it has died down just a little bit. But I will say surf's still strong, but definitely better than it was the last time we brought you out here, although the water is now further. So less of a beach to walk on to show you guys. We'll check in with you a little bit later. Reporting live in Destin, Hannah McKenzie, Channel 3.
And you can almost hear those stories now in the next couple of months as those beaches will have eroded. They're faring pretty well now because of renourishment and programs in the past, spending millions of dollars to bring those beaches and basically pump them in from further out in the Gulf of Mexico as they erode. Those are going to need renourishment at some point, and probably sooner rather than later, given this storm and the strength of it right now. And that new twist, you saw that sign of private property. Well, that was an issue some years ago in Okaloosa County, where some private property owners didn't want to have their sand and beach renourished, and you had a little...
That will be yet another debate for...
That'll be a story, no doubt, for many months, hopefully not years to come, but a lot of erosion. I'm not sure, we've seen this picture on the right a couple of times. I'm not sure what's lying down there, but it doesn't look like it's supposed to be at that angle. I'm not sure what that is or where that is. I think most of the pictures that we're getting of the most severe damage is Mexico City Beach area and Panama City Beach area. You see some pretty heavy destruction that took the brunt of those winds.
Panama City there.
What we haven't seen are the surges along the coast in the Big Bend area, Apalachicola, Port St. Joe. Got some indication that was a little bit inland, but that was the big worry heading into this because we were talking in some cases upwards of 13 feet of storm surge. If you remember, Ivan, what was the official? Do you remember the official surge? Because I know it got, what, 18, 20 feet in some parts.
Yeah, I mean, like Florida Town up there around, you know, up toward Pace in the Bay up in that area.
Well, on Bay Street.
Bay Street had,
my second floor.
18 seems to, you know, kind of strike. But Bay Street, I mean, stuff washed right over Bay Street all the way.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it was incredible. And then, you know, of course, then we had Dennis less than a year later coming through the area, and that bringing the damage. You know, we're seeing some the damage like we're seeing, say, from Pensacola Beach and Gulf Breeze generally is on the northern, the places that are facing north from people's piers and docks and things like that. That's locally where we've seen some of the damage, and that's from that north wind causing kind of a bit of a reverse surge moving, you know, as it's pushing in that direction, and kind of like we saw with Dennis for Pensacola Beach with the extreme damage there, too.
I think you're right. Some of the waters, I'm looking at some of the video from the Villa Venice area right now and the canal coming down. It looks rather calm in that area of South Santa Rosa County. You saw Renee, however, in Midway, just a little further east down the road on the north side of the peninsula with on the bay, and still some strong winds coming in from the north and knocking some docks down on the north side of the south side of Santa Rosa County, if you're following me here. In any case, winds dying down in Pensacola, and as we're looking at that radar, it seems the participation is far to our right. We haven't looked, we don't have a window in the studio, which would be nice, but what's it like outside in Pensacola?
Feels like we've got a heater in the studio.
Sue's grimacing.
You know,
somebody should pop their head outside and tell us what it's like outside the studio.
Throw up the beach cam. If we look at the beach cam, you can see how it looks at the beach. You know, on the right, we're seeing some images coming out of areas where it was more of a direct hit from Hurricane Michael around that Panama City area. But you know, that's how things are looking around town right now. I mean, it's a much calmer scenario. I mean, that's Pensacola Beach, where even the north wind has kind of calmed the surf down a little bit.
Right. Let's go back. Oriya, you popped that picture up. Is that the dry dock storage that you were talking about in Panama City Beach? Look at that.
A pile of boats that needs to be cleaned up.
Boy, that's reminiscent of Ivan and Bahia Mar that made the cover of USA Today all those years ago. That's a dry dock. Wow. In Panama City Beach, Orient, is that correct? Panama City Beach, dry dock, boat storage. Wow. Devastated.
And unfortunately, these are the types of images that we will probably be seeing over the next how many days. On the heels of Hurricane Andrew, remember when Ivan was approaching, we were cautioned by the officials at the state level that, you know, let's everybody get our mindset around that this storm comes in and does the damage that we anticipate that it will do, and certainly that it can do. You're looking at at least a 5-year rebuilding, you know, and they wanted to set that expectation very early on, and for so many people, that was a very real target.
Yeah, back in, you know, Hurricane Andrew back in the early 90s, and now really, you know, if we look back through this data, this is going to be the strongest since Hurricane Andrew. Hurricane Andrew was ruled a Category 4 hurricane after making its landfall. Then 10 years later, they went back and looked at the data and then ruled Hurricane Andrew a Category 5, basically kind of analyzing that data. You know, and with hurricanes, you know, you talk about the Saffir-Simpson scale, which runs from 1 to 5. 5, and that's based on more like current conditions, whereas the enhanced Fujita scale, when you're talking about tornadoes, the enhanced Fujita scale runs from 0 to 5, and that's based on a look at the damage. It's after the fact. After the tornado has hit the area, a team goes in and determines how strong it was based on what kind of damage they've observed, and then give it a ranking on that enhanced Fujita scale from 0 to 5. But with Andrew, yeah, originally in the early 90s, it was Category 4 Andrew that hit and devastated that area around South Florida. 10 years later, they went through, they poured through data, looked at that, and said, hey, this was actually a Category 5 hurricane that hit South Florida. And in this case, this is a Category 4 that was just right on the edge of being a Category 5 hurricane, hitting that area around Panama City, Mexico Beach, those areas just getting slammed. And we're just going to continue to see this video come in, and you're going to see, you know, beach houses and things that have been just beat up by the wave action and the storm surge, and roofs that have blown off. And it's going to be a total rebuild for much of this. And yeah, Sue, like you're saying, I mean, this is going to take a long, long time for this area of the Florida Panhandle to recover and to get back to normal. And these are areas that are absolutely beautiful, that a lot of people come down to enjoy the beaches and spend some time relaxing and getting in the warm emerald colored waters. But for those areas, it's not going to look like that for a while.
Yeah, and then you talk about the economic impact because of the tourism, and you know, a lot of the economy there is very much dependent on that.
Well, we haven't talked about the catastrophic fund that the state set up years ago after those devastating storms of 2004. The state-run self-insure. Insurance companies buy insurance in case they have big losses like this, and the state reinsures those insurance companies, saying we got your back. And was gosh, I think the last story we did, we're talking about $20 billion in reinsurance money that the state was holding on to as far as that catastrophic fund. This is going to put a big dent in it. If you remember, much of that fund was funded by a surcharge on everybody in the state's car insurance. Will that be coming? We'll have to look at the cost of this one, but you know, the note we saw before, the third strongest hurricane to hit the U.S. is this one. Does that mesh with what you?
I'll have to.
I think that's what ABC I think put up that graphic.
You got
here.
that? Yeah.
I mean, this is the third strongest storm to hit the United States of America.
Live from ABC News, this is continuing coverage of Hurricane Michael.
You are tuned to our special coverage of Hurricane Michael. I'm David Wright in New York, and we are following the eye of this hurricane as it moves past Panama City, just east of Panama City, bearing down on Tallahassee, Florida. Wind speeds currently 150 miles an hour in Tallahassee. That's where we find ABC's Victor Oquendo. Victor, how's it going?
Well, David, things are only getting worse here as Hurricane Michael quickly approaches. Just to give you an idea about what's going on here at our hotel, we are safe along this side where we are, but on the other side, some aluminum side paneling of the building has actually been ripped right off and come down, actually damaging a few of the cars out here in the parking lot. Throughout the rest of Tallahassee, there are several reports of downed trees. So you've got a lot of debris right now blocking off a lot of streets. So that is why emergency officials, the county, everyone here is urging folks to absolutely stay off the streets and shelter in place until Hurricane Michael completely passes through Tallahassee. We'll be looking at conditions like this. It'll only be getting worse, by the way, for another 1 to 2 hours here. Again, the major concern, I just mentioned that a lot of those streets are closed. Tallahassee, Florida's capital, it's got trees all over the place, and we've known for quite a while now that a lot of these will be coming down, and they'll be taking out power lines as well. It wasn't too long ago, a big old branch came down right on top of a car here inside this parking lot. We're expecting a lot of damage like that as Hurricane Michael continue making its way right here through Tallahassee. We can tell you, though, that officials have been prepared for this one. They've got a lot of crews in place that will be ready to ride out and get the city back up and running, because a lot of folks right now are without power as well. David?
Victor, I'm not sure I understand the track of this storm quite correctly, but if I do understand it correctly, it looks like it'll pass just to the left of Tallahassee, just to the west of Tallahassee, I should say. But that doesn't mean that you will be spared the wind and the rain, because it sounds like that will churn right through Tallahassee, and that Tallahassee will experience pretty much the brunt of this storm, no?
That's what we're seeing right now, David. It does look like the storm is going to be to the west of us, but that also puts Tallahassee on that dirty side of the storm. There's still a chance here that we could see some tornadoes. We'll be looking at, strong wind gusts, just like this one we're starting to feel right now. They've been much stronger than this just within the past 20 minutes or so as well. We'll be in the thick of things here for quite some time, but we won't get the eye wall will not be passing directly over Tallahassee.
So you'll be spared the eye, but the brunt of the storm, the dirty edge of the storm, as you called it there, will pass right over Tallahassee with those powerful winds, which still have not dissipated from when they hit the shore. 155 miles an hour when they hit the shore. Let's look at the power of those winds. This is a rooftop right in Panama City, and just look at entire homes have been swept away there. These are homes that are built to withstand hurricanes, but you can see the devastation. That, I believe, is from Tessa Talacaro. I thought that was Ginger Z's footage. I'm sorry. But basically wreckage left in the wake of this storm. Those winds will be almost as powerful when they hit Tallahassee.
That's what's so impressive about this storm, David, is that it's just moving so quickly that we'll still be feeling those strong hurricane-force winds. Usually, once these hurricanes hit land, they slow down substantially, but Hurricane Michael is such a fast mover. We're seeing it happen right now. Take a look. This rain, another strong band coming through right now as these winds really start to pick up. We've felt stronger ones than this, where it really almost just takes you right off your feet, but we'll be feeling this in Tallahassee for quite some time right now. Again, officials have been warning people for hours now, telling them that if they did not evacuate, that if they did not leave their homes, it is way too late at this point. You need to shelter in place.
This is the third most powerful storm ever to hit the United States, the most powerful storm in 50 years since Hurricane Camille. Emergency crews have been bracing for this, but as this storm barrels through the south, one has to wonder if the entire southern United States are fully prepared. They don't usually, Florida, where you are, they're used to hurricanes, not so much in some of the states farther to the north.
That's right, David. But just to give you an idea of what officials are saying about this storm hitting Tallahassee, they, in a press conference, recently said that Tallahassee has not seen a storm like this in more than 100 years. Now, we got to Tallahassee yesterday afternoon. We drove through much of this town, and we've got to tell you, it didn't feel like a city that was on edge, a city that felt like there was an incoming powerful storm like this one. Just to give you an idea, we only found one store owner who was boarding up his music supply store, and he told us he's lived here his entire life. And the last time that he boarded up the shop was actually in the 80s. Now, there was Hurricane Hermine 2 years ago. That was a Category 1, though. That managed to do a ton of damage here. Obviously, Hurricane Michael, a much different beast.
ABC's Victor Oquendo in Tallahassee. Thank you very much, Victor. Stay dry as best you can. Let's turn now to Sam Champion. He is in Miami in the Weather Center there. Sam, you and I have been talking about the track of this storm, how it is basically barreling through the south like a bowling ball.
Yeah. Still at, what, 14, 15 miles an hour, still have winds at about 140 miles an hour. And this storm has no connection. The center of this storm, the circulation, no connection to water. So we have a lot of impact still to go with this storm. This is going to be a long, all the way into late Thursday night into Friday to get rid of and not be talking about this storm any longer. We'll start with the fact that we have flood warnings out in Pensacola right now. They've had 7 inches of rain. They could have an additional 4 inches of rain. So that is even on the softer side of the storm, if you will. And we still have the center of this storm kind of moving over I-10. Now, I-10 is the highway that runs right through the Panhandle and takes you either toward New Orleans or toward Jacksonville, depending on the direction you're going. So the center of this storm moving over I-10 right now. Still beautiful circulation on this thing, which you would look at for a healthy hurricane. That entire circle and all the thunderstorms running around it and all the feeder bands as well. David, something else that's just amazing right now. So take that flood watch and flood warning that we see in Florida and then run it all the way up the coastline to Boston with this storm. Now, here's how that connection's made. There's a pretty strong cold front that's moving through the Midwest right now. It has everything to do with what's going to happen with Michael with the next 24 hours, 36 hours or so. Because what happens is, as a hurricane moves onshore, it's a tight water delivery system. Everything is wrapped around it. But when it gets onshore, what you start to see is it opening up, spreading up, and then boom, it'll throw all its moisture out. And that cold front is driving down, catches that moisture, and that rain will enhance the rain all the way up into Ohio, Pennsylvania, New York, New Jersey, New Hampshire, Massachusetts. So the cold front was going to deliver rain anyway. Now it's going to deliver even more rain because it has tropical moisture mixed in with it, and that's why we have those flood watches from Panama City all the way up to Boston, and that's incredible.
Sam, people have been talking about the soft side of this storm. You just used that expression yourself. And people have been talking about the dirty side of this storm. Can you briefly explain what that means?
Yeah, absolutely. So, David, every time you look at a hurricane, and those of us who forecast it for a long time kind of mentally do this, you draw a circle around the hurricane, then you draw a cross right through the middle of that circle. The worst part of it will be in the northeastern quadrant. So if I turn around and do that for you and do it on the screen here, the worst part of it is in that quadrant, that northeastern quadrant. It's got the worst wind, the worst waves, the worst rain typically, and the worst thunderstorms typically. Now we can see those thunderstorms wrap around the entire circle, but usually when we see a storm, and even a powerful hurricane, it's that northeastern corner that's the worst side of the storm, because that wind is constantly pushing in that direction. So when you see the softer side, the impacts of the wind, or that left side, the west side of the storm, the wind's going to be a little bit less, the rain might be a little bit less, and the storm surge will certainly be less in those communities. So when you look at a storm that's going to make impact, look at where the eye is and look at everything east, and that's usually where you're going to get your bigger damage.
All right, Sam, stay with us if you could. We're going to go, though, to Ginger Z by telephone from Mexico City Beach. You've seen a lot this morning, Ginger. How's it looking right now?
I have, and it is. I just came out of a condo that we are staying in this really well-fortified condo building, and the woman who actually let us come into the condo building last night to ride out the storm here, we were just speaking with her, and it was such an emotional interview because she has most likely lost her home, which was on the water. We can't see it from here, and we're definitely not able to leave from here. But when we look out the windows here, when I'm standing right now on the back side of the condo building, I see cars floating, surge still in all of the streets, all of the trees snapped from half and below. When I look in the piles of debris that are giant, you have huge pieces of refrigerators, standing freezers, homes, the contents of homes. And it's not just the outside of homes, it's not just the vehicles, but we're seeing the homes as if they exploded. And when I was standing here during the heat of the storm, and I watched that house come off of its foundation, it made me tear up because I thought, I've always, I know the power of storm surge. We made a 3D graphic about it. It was as if that was coming to life. It was very movie-like, very film-like, and now it's not film-like. Now it's reality. And now I'm standing here, and all I can see, until my eye can't see anymore, is devastation. There's only one. There are a couple of other storms I've covered that would be something like this, and it looked like this in Katrina, and it looked like this for parts of Sandy. And, of course, there have been other storms, but this one will absolutely, as you've heard, go down in the books for so many reasons. But the heart of it, the humanity of it, is settling in very early. There is a house missing, one of a dozen, our neighbor here was telling us, where there was a woman in there. She knew there was a woman that stayed in there, and that house is no longer standing. And I just saw a report about the fatalities in Mexico Beach. I am so hoping that is not that woman, but it sounds like it may be at least one of them, because we're even seeing even cars right now. I see it the back end of a pickup truck just sticking out, and that's how deep the water is in some places still. And this is after the storm has passed, right?
Right.
At a certain point when we were inside and we were watching the storm surge, it was lapping up at the second floor here, and so we were on the third floor. So I believe that they ended up having a 15-plus foot storm surge.
We heard
the
Sam
vehicles that we
talking
had-
there about the dirty
Yeah.
edge of the storm and the softer edge. You're definitely
Yeah.
east of Panama City where this thing made landfall on the dirty end.
Yes, we were in that northeast quadrant or the dirty side of the storm, and we were in it for over an hour. When you have that type of wind coming at you for that long and pushing the water like a big bubble of water, it comes in like a wall, and it looked frightening. From
Like a
my
tsunami,
window, I've
sounds like.
never, ever seen anything like that before. It was, again, very film-like, very day after tomorrow-ish, but happening right before our eyes.
Wow.
The end of your truck, hold on. The man that was saying, that's the end of his truck that I saw. Yeah. And that's the thing, is we are on an island now. I mean, we are in this safe place, but we are not going to be able to get out, nor would we even want to for a very long time. And that's the other reality in a lot of these storms that I've covered, right? So the devastation happens. It's surreal. Then it starts to settle in. I mean, these people are going to have to probably wait at least 24 hours to go find out if their home survived, their cats inside, their neighbors that stayed. But then you have to remember that it goes well beyond that. These two were about to get married in 2 weeks. Their wedding is 2 weeks from now. And she had her dress in the house. She has all of the parties. And everyone was supposed to come here. This is a beautiful place that people cherish and celebrate. And now it really does look very much like a wasteland.
I mean, you remember back to Hurricane Katrina, where the storm itself was simply